completely innocent joke. It is 6 o'clock, so I'm unmuting the
6 p.m.
microphone.
Yep, I'm calling the meeting to order if we are unmuted.
We are.
Counselor. So we are going to do a facility tours for those who may be online, watching from home or listening from home. We will be out of pocket for maybe 20 minutes and resume the meeting once we get back from the facility tour. So shall we?
So in a little bit, you'll be able to see why all this mess is there.
Well, I think we can see it right here.
So what actually, so this rack is actually gonna replace this rack in the center. So it's all our new consoles.
Yeah.
We got new consoles, new workstations.
Right.
Dispatch.
Yep.
It's more.
That was what my inner question was when we're saying W facility. Around the industry.
Need some.
Could be.
We're in the next step. We're in the next step.
Don't tell them, Jim.
Can't get better without getting worse first.
It's a business owner's perspective.
Yeah.
That was the facilities.
Thank you for that very informative tour.
Yes.
Really good upgrades.
Yes.
Every town want to go in half on the DPW. So
No comment.
no comment. That's wise. That's wise.
Berry Town want to let us build a facility for Berry City in the town.
Without paying taxes on it.
That one I will comment on. I'm pretty sure that's a no. Yes to the first part, pretty sure it's a no to the second part.
No taxes, no? So you heard me talk about Power DMS. So this is the policy suite, and there's other modules that you can use on this as well. This happens to be the standard that is used for accreditation. If we ever decided to go for CLIA accreditation,
Mhm.
all the standards, what you don't see here because we don't have that module. All the standards would be published here, and you could have an assessment. So all the policies that we're writing now are up to the standards.
Can I interrupt? Talk to me about the accreditation. What was it you said?
Korea.
CLIA,
Okay, what is that? For those of me that don't know.
that is the commission, Commission for Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies.
Okay.
So anywhere in the United States, if you, and beyond, actually, if you are an agency that wants national accreditation, it's done through CLIA. There are some states that use state accreditation. I believe Texas may be one, there's a few others in state accreditation. Vermont is not often. I think you will find in the near saying the way things are going with professionalization and reform, you will see that maybe an option where they publish standards, which would probably be based on employment standards, to say that every agency has to meet these minimum standards. They're already doing that somewhat. For instance, the use of force policy, the body worn camera policy, the taser policy, they're all state mandated, which are written in line with the accreditation principles.
And so, are there, other than to know that you're rated up there with the best, as far as being accredited for it, is there any other advantage to?
Yes,
that?
it's actually insurance savings, as well as, your officers know, there's no second guessing. It's, you follow the standards, you follow the book, and that's how you practice. It's a learning curve for them, as are all new policies, but once they get used to it and everything, it just makes memberships.
Super.
So, all my documents are in here. Oops. All the documents are in here, so there's different folders here. We have a promotional process going on now, so I'm making them read all of these. We're being tested on various things, including the policies. They're being tested on the President's report on 21st century policing, procedural justice, and community policing. They're all DOJ, so if you open them up, they're all the DOJ publications. All the tests that the test questions are coming out of all the materials, and that's what you saw in the special order that was put out, so they can read and study.
So is that just for law enforcement, or is that something that would be maybe on your part of the website for the average citizen to be able to see what that is?
See these?
Yes, like the community policing defined.
We can read them all right here.
Outstanding.
And
No, sorry, go ahead, chief.
you can also see, I'll talk about, if I make a policy here, public facing. So if you go here, rules of conduct, they click on that, the policy that you approved. This is a public facing document, power agreements, so anybody in the community can read the ones that we make public facing.
Okay, so this is, I was gonna ask you this later, chief, but we're literally talking about it. So the manager and the council would like basically all of the police department policies to be publicly available on the website. So do you have Nicholas said he was gonna mention it to you, but we had this conversation on Friday, so I may be getting ahead of it.
There are certain policies that may reveal tactics that
Yeah.
wouldn't be publicized, but all the other, every other policy will be public facing.
And what, and just so I know, what's your timeline for,
I hope to have all this completed by the summer.
lovely, thank you. Talk to Nicholas about that.
So right now, and when I go back into Power DMS, I'll show you. Right now, our rules of conduct, our use of force, internal affairs, complaints and discipline, and the ride-along program are the only ones that are public facing.
Okay.
And all those analyses that you saw, that were in the policies that we talked about, they're all right there. That gets like the use of force analysis
Mhm.
that was in the policy. This is all done, and available to the public as well. It breaks down all the use of force statistics. So
That's really detailed.
And I would-
So,
Minor nitpicky thing, but when you get to like putting up a larger amount of policies, it might be good to just say like PD policies, which is a list of bulleted links for ease of
It's
access. from the
actually, it's
community.
probably going to have a public link to all the public policies right on Power Minutes.
Cool, great. Thank you.
But I just, these I hyperlinked because they're
Yeah.
talked about here. But they will be available on the public facing.
Thank you. That's awesome.
So going back to all the policies here, here's all the ones that we've talked about and you guys have approved. So if you click on a policy, like the rules of conduct, all the officers have now you can get this on, there's an app that comes on your phone too. It's a free app. So they have access to all of these. So if they're on the scene and you, gee, what was I supposed to do again? As long as it's not a heated moment thing, if they can pick the time, they can look it up and you can tell that. So they have access to all of these here.
I see you have an edit. I'm assuming that the officers do not have that edit ability. Yeah.
They do not. So all these tabs here, if you see like every time I put them out, when we publish them, I have to click on assignments. And it says like all users had to assign these. So if you go to signatures, you can see some of my folks that don't work much, the part-timers like Joe also, and the reserve officers have yet to sign some of these. But everybody else over here signed them. You can see like Noah Grabowski, he's our newest officer. He just signed it. It shows when all the details about when he signed it and everything. You can also go to analytics and go to documents and do signatures needed. There's a whole admin piece on here, so even if an officer says, gee, you can't hold me accountable because I didn't sign the policy, we can look and say, gee, on such and such a date, you actually opened it, and you read it, and we noticed and you read it 9 different times, and here's the dates and the times. So this is just all the analytics in the background that for accountability purposes. The beauty of this as well, go back to the document, actually put one more. right now, we only have licenses for the police department. The fire department is thinking about, been talking to Pete Cushman, talked to him, brought it up in the chief search process about using Power DMS and splitting the cost and buying more licenses. It could also be used citywide, but the more licenses we get, what we can do down here where it says workflow, we can start a new workflow. Everybody on this committee could actually have a license. You can activate them, deactivate them, when your term's up. You can actually send these, so instead of having to print them all and keep notes, you can actually add comments right in the sidebar of this, and it goes through the work. So this would be useful for this committee as well. Yeah.
You're assuming that some of us are smart enough to be able to do that.
This is true.
But I like you thinking.
Good point.
Mhm.
So like here where it says discuss, if this was in a workflow. And for instance, you wanted to, discuss it amongst the group. If you clicked on discuss, you would have a comment over here that says, what did you mean by this type of thing? And you would be the author, and I could reply, or anybody could reply, anybody could put input. And it could go through the whole process.
And I'm assuming with that process that if there would be an email or something sent that would say, hey, there's new info on this document or something
Yeah.
similar. Yeah.
Yeah, so. There's workflow templates that you can create, and there's also. Another general. Messaging. So you can actually have messages that come in that says, hey, you've got new things in your Power DMS inbox. So there's many things you can set up in the system. We've also been housing a lot of our forms here, accident reports, affidavits, all those things. So the officers now have access to them anywhere that they can open. So it's been a very, very useful.
Is this something that the council has discussed for use throughout the city? No?
They have not. Rick tabs. You do have some issues with some folks that may not be computer literate, but it can be utilized, through the majority of the departments. Like the city hall can use this, fire department can certainly use this. And there's securities on it. So if you go to like this folder here and manage this folder, and you click on the security, only myself and the deputy chief can see that folder. So if the fire department has any of their folders over there, we wouldn't be able to see that.
And I'll just, to give a more detailed answer to the question you just asked, the modernization of the Barre City municipal government is a huge priority for the council, for the manager, and for Rick Taft. And I think it's a great goal to have the whole city on this. The chief's right, and that there's definitely some learning curves to be had as it's 2023.
Yeah.
And just to give the committee a perspective, up until very recently, there were still city employees punching their time cards.
Mhm.
Like in the past 12 months, there are city employees who have chunk good old fashioned cards. So we're moving slowly but surely towards stuff like this.
That sure gives a better perspective.
Yes, yes.
Oh, wow.
And
Enough said.
we just started looking at a fleet management, asset management
Mhm.
software to keep track of everything, so that instead of, like the policy that we approved here on the fleet operations, where they fill out the fleet inspection, if there's an issue, we'll be able to take out their phone on the app and just submit a work request saying, yeah, I noticed when I did something. Submit that. It also tracks the fleet. I call it fleet management. It's actually asset management. It tracks everything from how much gas is being used to the price of the maintenance, the preventive maintenance schedule. Again, going back to trying to keep our cars for, serviceable for the most amount of time. Which is, why when I went out and thanks to the council, was able to purchase new vehicles, admin, detectives, and some for the fire department. We wanted to make sure that we had the ability to move forward with this to keep them on the road.
And the council is hoping historically, and before Chief Vale, we were going through vehicles, specifically cruisers, every 3 years. And so we're hopeful, and I personally have asked the chief, to do as much as possible to be able to keep the community safe without having to replace every cruiser every 3 years.
About how many miles typically Chief,
On what?
on a cruiser that's 3 years old?
So it all depends. What my goal is right now, I want to, and you saw that in one of the policies, I want to have, instead of what they call frontline cars and then detail cars, I'm just gonna have field vehicles. Everybody's gonna have the same vehicle, so it will keep the mileage down. More appropriate instead of just everybody 24/7 running the one hunt car.
Yeah.
And racking miles. So that's my goal to do that. So I would estimate 3 years. Car depending on the agency. Whereas in many typical agencies, a 3-year-old.
Oh, you're thinking of it like everything, absolutely everything.
I try.
To cover, yeah.
Some things have been a challenge, but everything I do,
I bet.
I try not to do it in a vacuum and try to
Yeah.
think it through and go through pinpoint process.
You've been telling me you've got a lot, since you walked in here, it hasn't been that long.
In a year, March 7th.
Has it been?
Well,
I mean, any questions on any
I'm
of
good.
this? Before you shut it down?
Just learn how to
It
use.
reminds me of Microsoft Teams a little bit. We
It does.
Yeah.
use that at work and it's a very
Yeah.
similar program.
Yeah, my son has something like that too, that everything that you're saying.
And it says to do, so like.
That's the only time you're gonna see that during your tenure, Chief.
So when I put out the new policy for signatures, if I were an officer opening this, it would say to do, and it would say, you need to sign policy 303, blah, 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 and then have them all listed.
is there a hyperlink that takes them right to it?
Yeah, when they get the email, they can go right to Power DMS, and then when they're here, you can hyperlink, it'll open it, and then it'll, when you're done, it'll say return to inbox, and then it'll go right back and bring you to the next one. So everything is hyper.
Okay. Any other questions on Power DMS? Excellent. Thank you, Chief.
No worries. I just wanted to show you folks you read about it, but you probably don't see the
No.
back end of what goes on.
Not at all.
So now I would consider approval or any adjustments to the agenda. The rest of the agenda.
Motion to approve. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion is approved. Consider approval of the previous meeting minutes. I don't have the date off the top of my head. I'm sorry.
January 9th.
January 9th. I'll make a motion that we approve the previous meeting minutes from January 9th.
Second.
All those in favor, unless there's more discussion?
Aye.
Aye. Counselor, any guests?
Nope.
No one in the room. And the report from Council Bozazak.
Town meeting day is 2 weeks till Tuesday. That if you want a ballot and you're a city resident, you want a ballot, you'll call the city clerk. We did hear that there were we had postcards that the clerk sent out to all active voters in Berry City. Some folks, including myself, never received those postcards. Right, no, and we heard that a lot, and they all were, it's a Berry post office problem. Carol sent them, same. Carol sent them to the post office. Still haven't gotten mine. I like to vote on election day anyway. So point being is reach out to the city clerk if you would like to order your ballot and vote by mail, and I would do that in the next like 7 to 10 days because we're getting close. Other than that, I don't have much of a report to offer. The council has voted to put the budget on the ballot. We did that by the statutorily required date of January 31st, which the manager, I think, did a very good job of balancing the needs of the departments while also asking the departments to, frankly, be stingy when we could afford to be stingy. But as you saw on the tour earlier today, that there is still money being invested from the city into the departments. So while it is a larger increase than we have seen the past couple of years, it's around a 4.8% increase. Many of our neighboring municipalities are well over double digits.
Yeah.
So compared to where the rest of Washington County is, I feel comfortable that this is a budget that is responsible without being overly burdensome on folks who are still very much struggling right now. Other than that, I don't think there's been much PD related business from the council the past month. So happy to answer any questions.
Questions for the counselor? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to the chief's report. You've been reporting for the last hour.
Yes.
You do it so well.
So we received 2 more applications. One of them, I'm thankful to say, is from one of our current interns that will be graduating from Norwich University in April. So I'm excited to put her through the process, and I have no doubt she'll be successful in the process.
This
And
is
hope-
officers or dispatch chiefs or
For officers.
officers?
Thankfully, we're up to staff in dispatch. With the exception of if we get the dispatch supervisor position in the future and take on more contract towns, we would have to put at least 2 more, one being dispatch supervisor, and then another position. So again, the one intern, we have 2 interns here now, but the one intern has applied. The other one is looking to go back home to his home state of Connecticut, which is absolutely great for him. Happy to give him a learning experience, but I'm very grateful that the one intern wants to stick around and be a copier.
Great.
She also has a project that she's working on. A lot of them have projects that we assign them and work with them on. And one of the projects that she wants to do is community oriented. So she's going to have a open house here, design an open house for the public safety building, the police fire department. And we're looking to have things like car seat safety checks. You got to be certified to actually set those up. So we're looking to have somebody that's going to be able to do that. The fire chief's going to have some neat little gadgets like little mini burn houses and stuff that he's going to be putting together. And we're looking forward to that. Hopefully we can have that in April or May.
Great.
Our promotional process for sergeant is underway. They have been assigned, as you can see, all the materials up there. I'm designing the written test, which is designed through a company called Developmental Associates. The actual process is, and they've already, I believe most of them have completed. They have until the 17th to take the emotional intelligence test, which is an online assessment. That portion of it won't be scored. All the other processes in the actual promotional process will be scored. Those that are going for sergeant, so the process is going to be covering sergeant and corporal. In case the corporal makes sergeant, then we would be able to fill the corporals right off the same list. If you're going for the sergeant's process, you're also going to have a portion of the test is going to be, or the testing process is going to be to write an essay paper on a issue that affects the community and making sure they're using all their internal and external resources. And incorporated into that, I use the infamous, unfortunate, Scary Barry moniker. And so that's incorporated into the essay on how they can dispel that and how they can work with the community to do, change the perception. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they come up with. So that's it on the promotional process. I was able to send, out of the 4 sergeants, I was able to send 2 of them off to the FBI LEDA Supervisory Leadership Institute. I got a, through VLCT, it was called the John Law Scholarship. They have, I was approved for that. They will pay for the majority of it. It costs just over $3,000 to send all 4, but they're gonna reimburse us for $2,500. So it's gonna be less,
cool.
less than one officer's tuition, because it's $795 just to go to the class. So we
Are
sent
you able to tell us who you're sending?
Steve Durgan and John Hool they just graduated on Friday.
Yeah.
Randy Tucker and whoever gets promoted out of this group will go to the one in November. The one last week was down in Hartford. The one in November will be up in Essex.
Yeah.
So they're the ones being held here in the state, so we don't have to pay any room and board. So
Yeah.
just the travel expenses
Yeah.
for the gas.
Great.
And I was able to send 2 of our corporals. I sent Joel Pierce and Brian Hoare to Mello Consultants supervisory course, which is not like the FBI LEDA course, but it's a frontline supervisor course. They went to that. So my goal is to make sure all the supervisors have all the supervisory training. One of the things that I recognized when I got here is they said they hadn't had the opportunity to go to supervisory training. Kind of showed. So we're going to take care of that. And last but not least, over the weekend, if anybody scours Facebook, they were able to find myself, the fire chief, and Buzzy jumping into a dumpster down in Wilkins.
How cold was that water?
That was true.
I saw them putting the snow in it afterwards. Oh, boy.
So we all did that. They raised over $6,000 for Chad. So it was a good time.
Great. Well done.
That's it for my report.
Any questions for the chief? Okay. We'll move on to number 8, which is to discuss and consider approving the K-9 operations policy. As always, chief, well done. You'll be shocked to know that I do have some questions as we move along, because somebody's got to bug you.
Yep.
We'll start on page 1. Any questions? Okay, flipping over to page 2, which includes organization and training.
So just to throw this out there, not only was a policy written with CALIA standards, but I also sent it to the academy for their K-9 training team, Bob Ryan and them.
Yeah.
And you'll see some of the things that what they accepted is their training points and standards. I incorporated into the policy.
Okay. So at the bottom, you see all the training, the patrol, and then the narcotics, and it says, letter C says several K-9 teams are still certified to marijuana hash and BHO.
Yes.
Give me some context for that.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask about the VHO.
Context to BHO or just that statement in general?
Both.
Okay, so BHO is butane honey oil. They actually, they create, and it's really nasty the way they do it. They take the water and butane and they extract, they make, it almost looks like meth, but it's this crystalline type wafer that's made out of the BHO.
Saw it upstairs.
Yes, yep,
Yeah.
so it was upstairs, yes.
Yeah.
And it's made out of marijuana through that process. So that's the BHO. The reason behind the statement is as marijuana has been made legal, not federally, but as it's been made legal around the country, most K-9 are not being trained to marijuana. So the statement here is that say you had a dog's life, usually, patrol dog's life is usually about 7 or 8 years. We still have teams in the state that are trained to hit on before the law changed, but currently they're not any new dogs coming through are not trained to do the marijuana.
Right.
And the reason for that is it's legal. So if the dog hits on marijuana and you're doing a car search, it's, you know, so they take that aspect in.
So that must come from the academy.
Yes,
Okay.
that was the academy's verbiage.
Okay. And so even though it doesn't apply here,
Correct.
I suppose at some point you could get a dog, you know.
Well,
I'm wondering if it's-
hypothetically speaking, if say we hired an officer that came with a canine and the canine still had, say, 3 years left in life and it was on, 5 years ago, it was trained to that, it would cover it.
That's why you're the boss. I didn't think of that. Okay. I was just trying to figure out how it fit. You
Yep.
just explained it perfectly. Thank you. Any other questions on page 2? Moving to page 3, which covers maintenance training, training age, storage and security and deployment.
So to cover that, when I got here, I found out that our canine handler was not DEA certified, so I got him licensed. He does have a license to maintain scheduled narcotics. So he can have training aids.
Any questions on page 3? Flipping to page 4, which covers residential searches, duties, responsibilities of canine handlers. I, again, have questions. Residential searches, once the residence is safe, who deems it safe? The handler or
Well, the handler.
responding officer?
The handler has the ultimate authority as to whether they're going to put the dog in. But if the residence is not safe, for instance, if there's any type of issue that the dog could get injured, they will make sure. I mean, obviously, there's an inherent risk in having a patrol dog, but the residence is deemed safe by the handler.
Okay.
Whether they're going to put the dog in.
And again, just a process thing, and I don't want to drag it out, but so the handler shows up, the responding officer is there, and I'm assuming the handler asks a bunch of questions, what have you seen? Is there broken glass and that kind of thing? And is that how the handler makes the decision, or does the handler actually go into the home, the
Both.
residence without
Both.
the animal to
They
begin?
sometimes will go in and take a look around. So the residential search could be for evidence, or it could actually be for a live person. So when they do go in there, specifically here, that bullet you're talking about where it says it's recommended the 2 canines are available for each residence, that they're talking about the evidence and narcotic searches with residents. And that's where they determine whether it's safe or not to let the dog go. Some of the places have, they're run down and they have a lot of
Sharp stuff.
sharps and dangers inside. They want to, they're not just going to let the dog go and just get all chewed up.
And then I circled the 2 canines.
Yep.
So typically do police canines that are trained, do they work well together? Is
Yes.
that typical?
Yep. They all train together.
Yeah.
For instance, Buzzy does training up there as well. They all train together, and quite often you will see 2 to 3 canine teams for the search one.
Yeah.
For that reason.
And how many canines are there in, like, say, Central Vermont region?
So there's one in Berrytown, there's
Yeah.
one here, Montpelier has one. I don't think the sheriff's department has one, Northfield doesn't have one, state police have one, so there's 4 right
I didn't
here.
realize Montpelier.
in Central. Yeah.
Okay, great. Down at the bottom, letter D, canine handler coordinates a search and tracking process. The communication center will establish a stop transmitting whenever a canine team is tracking or searching for a missing suspect.
Mhm.
So I wrote a question there. what if an officer sees a suspect fleeing? For instance, the officer is watching down a road while the canine is going through the woods. And the handler has said, stop transmitting. I guess I'm just curious how that's handled.
So they can get on the radio and say that, and you'll see somewhere later on in the policy that they have to be within, I think it's 30 feet, yes, and C under tracks. That the officer stays 30 feet behind because it's the handler's eyes. If they see something, they have to notify the handler.
Okay,
But what the stop transmitting is for is when you're going through looking for somebody, you want the dog to, not have all this commotion going on.
Yeah.
And if they're just transmitting on the radio, other officers running license plates or
Yeah.
whatever, then it just becomes problematic.
Okay. Any other questions on page 4? Moving to page 5, which covers tactical use of canine teams. Prior to that, sorry again, chief. The decision to deploy the dog remains with the handler. However, supervisor sufficiently apprised of the situation may decide not to deploy the dog.
Correct.
Can they overrule the handler and say, I think the risk to the dog is worth?
No.
Okay.
So the decision rests solely with the handler. But why it says that is if an officer is requesting a dog for a reason, without even checking with the handler, the supervisor can say, no, we're not going to use a dog for whatever circumstances
Okay.
arise.
Okay.
That's what that statement is.
Okay, so in other words, the
It's
supervisor.
not, there's a supervisor and there's a canine on scene and goes, I don't want to go in, no, you're going in type thing. That won't happen.
Okay,
The handler has the ultimate authority of saying, no, my dog's not going in there, it's not safe.
okay,
But the other part of the sentence is, without even having the handler be there, if an officer's like, hey, we want a dog.
right,
And the supervisor can be like, well, no, it's not conducive or whatever the circumstance may be.
got it, okay.
I had a question. It's just about when the dog has the tracking harness on, does it signal not to bite, or when the tracking harness is on? In case he runs into somebody, he won't automatically bite. I was just curious about that, the tracking valve.
No, so it should say something in here about where you can get bit.
Yeah, I
But
read
the handler has control of it.
Yeah.
So tracking, if you're tracking on a tracking harness, say you have a missing juvenile.
Yep.
The dog knows that what they're doing based on the handler's commands. So they're not gonna run and bite the kid.
And bite the
It's looking-
kid, that's what I was thinking, like, if he's got the vest on, I
No.
know it sounds like a dumb question, but. it's like,
So
if he's got the
they're
vest on,
trained
does he know?
specifically with
Yeah.
all these items and the handlers commands and everything, so
Yeah.
they know what they're doing. When they're sniffing, like say a hat or a coat.
Yeah, I
and
thought
going
so,
out,
they're automatically in
They
that mode.
know, right?
Yeah,
But if they're doing, like for a fleeing suspect, they would know. And if the
Bite and
handler
hold.
says the command, they can
Yeah.
do what they need to do.
yep. In my mind, it was a really good question, I was reading it, I'm like, oh. Yeah,
Any other questions on page 5?
no,
Moving to page 6, which includes barricaded subjects, handler protection, demonstrations, and narcotics detection canine teams. Anybody have any questions on these pages? Counselor, you're awful quiet.
We haven't gotten,
Okay,
there's 2 more policies.
okay.
He's interested in the vehicle search policy, aren't you?
Little old me,
Mhm.
An evil smile.
the liberal smile.
Page- With nothing on page 6, we'll move to page 7. Does anybody have any questions on page 7? That does cover vehicle searches, residential searches, and arrests and criminal apprehensions.
I'm just curious, ironically, on vehicle searches. Why is it called a vehicle search if you like go out of your way to say, this is not a search? Is it like a legal definition or like a?
Yeah, so they're
Term of art.
basically doing, well, it says right there, they're conducting a sniff.
Yeah,
So it's not an actual search as in a
yeah, yeah,
Fourth
yeah.
Amendment search
Okay.
and seizure. It's just a sniff.
It's not intrusive. They're
Right.
just sniffing something that
So
would
that-
be public.
So that's why it says vehicle search, but then it says this is not a search. That's alluding to it's not a constitutional
Yeah, cool.
amendment seizure.
I figured there was a reason. Thank you.
Any other questions? Page 7. Moving to page 8. Which includes accidental dog bites, health and care of the canines.
Is that covered by like city and like if someone gets
VLCT?
VLCT? Yeah, okay.
The only thing I wondered about, Chief, under accidental dog bites, the last bullet, canine handler will complete a detailed incident report and a dog bite report. Copies of all reports and statements will be approved before the end of the handler's tour of duty.
Right, so the supervisor has to make sure they're all complete, all the information's there, and sign off on them to go up the chain of command.
Okay. Do we need to say approved by a supervisor, or is the officer, again, you need to remember, since I'm asking the questions, I'll say I'm reading this as a layman. Or layperson. Does it need to say approved by a supervisor, or do you think that's clear enough?
I think it's clear enough.
Okay.
Because their regular incident reports have to be approved by a supervisor. And that's all that's alluding to, that everything has to be completed by the end of the tour of duty. Quite often, if officers get busy, they do have some incident reports that don't get filled out, but the majors have to, and this would be considered a major.
Okay, anything else on page 8? Moving to page 9. Do you, I have a note, I guess it would be D, which is canine handlers shall ensure that adequate ventilation is provided when the canine is left unattended in the vehicle. Do you have, I'm assuming the canine
They have the fan.
vehicles have the
Yep,
auto.
They have the
automatic-
the automatic fan.
Yeah, an auto start so that it cools and everything, okay.
Yep.
And I wrote warnings, I don't know why I wrote that. Why would be warnings? Thank you, Chief. I'm not gonna tell you what I wrote under the handler who mistreats or abuses, mishandles an animal.
Oh, I'm probably what I
Yeah.
wrote.
Uh,
Yeah.
Matter of fact, that's what it said. Yeah. Yeah, anything else on page 9? Nothing on page 9, we'll move to 10, covers reporting. Under A, chief canine appointments will be documented in the Valcor. Field reporting, canine handlers being the responsible officer assigned to a call will complete the incident report.
Mhm.
So I guess it goes back to that question. You have a responding officer who got called for the canine. Did they both fill out incident reports, or is it just the canine?
The canine officer has to do a supplemental report. If it's the canine officer's call, like when Corporal Gaylord works a shift,
Mhm.
if he gets sent to a burglary, that's his call. He's the responsible officer for the entire report.
Okay,
If Officer Fetcher has a burglary and calls for the dog to do a track, he does the supplemental.
okay.
And does Gaylord have to also do, even if he just went to a normal call and Mike stayed in the truck the whole time, does he have to do a report?
If the dog's not utilized, if there's an actual deployment,
Yeah, yes, of course.
then he has to do a report.
But if the dog is just not, he just handles it and it's fine, you don't need the dog. He doesn't have to do any supplemental. Oh,
And you'll also see on the website there where we had all the analyses, there's also a canine deployment analysis in there.
So the dog, the handler doesn't necessarily take the dog out unless the dog is needed. The
Correct.
dog never leaves, okay. Okay. Are there any other questions concerning canine operations, which is number 904? If not, then I would entertain a motion to approve the canine operations policy as presented by the chief.
Good. I'll.
Abby, you in a second?
Oh, sorry, second.
So we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion at all? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Approved unanimously. Number 9, which is discuss and consider approving the vehicle search policy. This is number 406. And we will again start with page 1. Anybody have anything on that?
I would preface this just by saying that the majority of this is state law.
Yep.
And it was also sent to Michelle Donnelly after she took office. I had her, this went through, all the aspects of this went through David Cahill, who was my state's attorney down in Hartford at the time when this policy was created. And he's now out of the country, but he was working for the State's Attorneys Association. And I sent it back through Michelle Donnelly just to make sure that she didn't have any comments or concerns, and she was happy with it.
Yep. Okay. Well, I'll tell you that with all due respect to all of those folks,
You have some questions?
we will have some questions.
I know the counselor will.
I wonder how many of ours will overlap. I'm curious.
All right. So, thank you, Chief. Page 1, folks. Questions? Moving to page 2. Sorry, page 1 was basically contents in general. Going to page 2. Which is still covering the general items and number 2, motor vehicle searches. Under reasonable articulable suspicion.
Mhm.
I guess I'm not sure. Something less than probable cause arises when an officer is able to state specific facts to support their suspicion of criminal conduct based on their particular training and experience.
So let me give you an example to hit that home for you, if you will. Take a probable cause is, I see you breaking into a building that's closed. Reasonable articulable suspicion is you may be skulking around when it's closed. You're not doing anything other than being there. But you're just kind of looking around, peeking around the corner, making sure somebody's not coming. You haven't committed an act to lend to probable cause yet, but you can articulably state you may be getting ready to break into the place. That's reasonable articulable suspicion. That's what the difference is. Does that help?
Yes.
What your question was?
One of the things that kind of caught my eye, so particular training and experience. So in other words, would a level 2 officer have less articulable suspicion possibilities than a level 3? Is that fair to assume?
Yes and no. So yes, they would. But also if they were a level 2 officer for 10 or 15 years, they would probably have a high level of articulable suspicion based on their experience.
Okay,
As a follow-up to if you're done.
they're done in that section. Yes, sir.
Okay, great, thank you. I will have a conversation as we go through this policy, and I'm not a voting member of this body. I feel very strongly that we over-police in this country. And I think that Vermont and specifically Barrie PD are leading the way in a lot of really good things. But I don't think that reasonable articulable suspicion should be used as the standard for motor vehicle stops, just as a practice generally. And I understand that lawfully you are completely able to do that, and I understand and respect that. But I think that there is just, there are so many times when we let a little thing turn into a big thing. And once you're in that situation and you're in a law enforcement interchange, whether that's over something as basic as a tail light being out or something that the officer deems to be more suspicious, I just think it's too much. And I think that we should be using probable cause as the standard for traffic stops. And much of my commentary tonight will reflect that belief.
Right, and I respect your position. Like I said, it is in the Constitution, and it is in statutory language. And for the most part, we don't use reasonable articulable, say that 10 times fast.
Yeah, literally.
Articulable suspicion,
Yes.
on traffic stops other than things like DUI. For
Mhm.
instance, a DUI, you're still, if you're weaving within your lane,
Mhm.
that's reasonable articulable. So that-
It gets better the more you say.
It is.
Yes, that-
Ballerina.
So for things like that, and for things like, hey, the car is parked outside of this business and they appear to be casing it, those types of things, it is put into that category of suspicion and not probable cause. We do not make arrests on suspicion. They have to be on probable cause. But yes, I do understand where you're coming from with all things going on in society that have been. And that's why we have the policy to state those things, that you can't go outside the box on these things.
Counselor, if I may,
Please.
you are an enormous asset to this group, and while you may not be a voting member, your opinion is always expected and wanted. So
Oh,
always,
thank you.
always. Yep. Again, we may, like Chief, we may not always agree, but your input is important. So please.
100%.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
And a lot of the times, what you'll see in the policy, it does seem like not this policy alone, but all policies, it does seem like, why is that in the policy? You're going to allow them to do this? The majority of what goes in the policy is to make sure that they don't go
Yeah. I do.
outside any constitutional right. And that's why all this verbiage is in there.
And I would just, last thing well, not last thing, but on this point,
Yes.
I would say that I think that our standard needs to be stronger than, well, we didn't violate anyone's constitutional rights.
Right.
We need to be pushing towards better practices and rethinking
Right.
how we do policing.
And I agree 100%.
Any other input on that section, folks? I'll move down to number 2, motor vehicle searches, letter A. A search of a vehicle incident to a lawful custodial arrest of one or more of its occupants is not authorized. Can you tell me how that fits in?
So based on the Supreme Court decisions, it used to be
Oh, I have
that
that.
we had the ability to go and search an entire vehicle anywhere where the person could lunge. And as long as they were locked up in the cruiser and not removed from the scene. But based on all the Supreme Court decisions, if I pull you out of the car and I now have you locked up in the back of the car, there was no way that you could have reached for that gun that I'm now searching for in there. So that's where all of that verbiage comes from, based on we're confined to a very narrow box, if you will.
Yeah.
Because as the counselor had mentioned, the way policing was going, there were certain people that would try to get into a car And they would use something as a mechanism to do so. So now we follow all the Supreme Court laws.
And so now that searching the rest of the vehicle, once you've detained one of the occupants, is only after permission is granted. Which we'll cover in a bit. Anything else on page 2?
No, that was all I was gonna do.
Page 3, which continues the motor vehicle searches. Under letter D. So who grants consent? If,
The person in physical control of the
even though it's not their vehicle? So if it's my vehicle and Joe Blow is driving it and Joe Blow has contraband in there, whether I've let him take it or not, if he grants you consent, how do you prove that there's contraband, the contraband belongs to the owner of the vehicle or to the owner just through good police work?
Yes.
Okay. So, sorry. If, if
I get
the
it.
driver's not the owner, but the owner's in the vehicle, the driver says you can search it, but the valid
If
owner
the
of the
owner,
vehicle.
if the owner's present,
Okay,
then that changes.
And that's in here. I read that somewhere, didn't I, in here?
seriously, I missed that. Sorry.
Under letter C, under consent search. We won't address that.
I think so.
Yes.
Yeah. It's just a little further on in the.
Oh, down here.
Where you have your other
I even
stuff?
asterisk, it, yep. See, it did, well,
Sort of.
sort of it answers it, yes.
But if the owner is on scene, the owner can say, look, I don't want you searching this.
Okay,
So we don't
Yes.
search the other guy.
I think that's why I asked Rick, is because I didn't feel like he'd explained it well enough there. Are we comfortable with that? Okay. Is there any other questions on page 3?
I do. So can we play out the scenario? If you would, so you get pulled over.
Mhm.
And the officer makes the request to search the vehicle and the person just outright denies it. So what does the officer say? So, can I search your vehicle? No, you may not. What's the next step to that exchange?
So hypothetically speaking, an officer's not going to just stop a car and say, hey, can I search it?
Right.
But if they have that reasonable articulable suspicion
Mhm,
and they ask to search a car and they deny it,
mhm.
that may be the end of it. If they have probable cause for the search warrant and they're just asking, do you want to give me consent to search it? I do have probable cause to seize it, but if you want to give consent, you may. Under that scenario, they would seize it and have to write the warrant. What would give that probable cause is something in plain view. A lot of the times they will stop a vehicle and they will see empty heroin bags or a crack pipe, which gives them probable cause to search the vehicle. If they ask you for consent, you search it, there's nothing there but the paraphernalia, you're on your way. If they ask you and you say no, they can seize it under the probable cause of all that stuff that's in plain view, write the warrant and search the car.
So a person gets pulled over and that has to rise to the level of reasonable articulable suspicion.
Mhm.
And then from that point on, someone is perfectly able to say no and just continue on their way. But if the officer sees something that rises to the level of reasonable
Probable cause.
probable cause, thank you.
Because
That's when the ability to seize the vehicle
yes,
kicks in.
a search warrant will only be issued on probable cause and reasonable suspicion.
And so what's so an officer has probable cause and they can seize the vehicle. with a search warrant? Do they need the search warrant to seize the vehicle?
Nope, they seize
That's what I
the
thought.
vehicle, it gets towed back here, it gets put in the Sally port, locked up with evidence tape on all the openings, the
Yeah.
doors and everything, and then they write the warrant.
And again, I know this goes beyond you, but when you're given somebody an option, a choice, and that choice is either consent to the search, or we're going to take your vehicle now for a couple of days. That's not quite a choice in my view.
The only way it can be not a choice is if the officer. And like I said, you don't see officers going out and saying, oh, hey, can I search your car?
Mhm.
There's usually something that
Mhm.
leads them to believe that something's there, and usually it turns into probable cause.
And so would just to take the conversation back a little bit. Your example with DUI and swerving is swerving in the lanes not probable cause for what's the term of?
While distracted.
Yeah, or
distracted driving.
no, I'm thinking of specifically, there's a
So for instance.
reckless driving, that's what I was
It's not.
thinking.
It's
Okay,
not.
it's not.
So for instance, speed limit's 40 miles per hour,
Mhm.
you're doing 20,
Mm-hmm,
you're not breaking the law.
Mhm.
But it's 12:30 at night, the bar just closed, you're
Mm-hmm.
doing 20, you haven't crossed the line,
mm-hmm,
but you're having trouble maintaining a straight line.
mm-hmm,
You still haven't broken any of the statutes
mm-hmm,
as listed under Title 23 for motor vehicles. You
Mhm.
didn't cross a line, you didn't commit a traffic violation, but that's reasonable suspicion. That, gee, you know, you're going 20, the bar's just closed, it's 40 miles an hour. Looks like you're having a hard time keeping a straight line. That's reasonable suspicion you're intoxicated.
Okay.
Once you go through all those sobriety exercises, then it becomes probable cause. Hey, I got an odor of intoxicants, you failed the sobriety tests, now I'm gonna take you in and ask you to take a record.
Get them off the road. After almost getting killed a few times on the road by people that are totally impaired, I am grateful for that because I would not be here.
and how much is required of, well. Just bear with me while in like the spirit of Miranda rights, you have to tell people certain things, right?
Yes.
So when does an officer have to explain to an individual when they get pulled over, like, hey, right now you're under this reasonable articulable suspicion? Like, I'm kind of facetiously asking because I know this doesn't happen, but you know, it's really easy for folks who don't understand this as well as we all do, talking about this for hours every month, to not know their rights or to not understand the difference between reasonable articulable suspicion and probable cause. So how much information are officers required to give individuals when they are pulled over about these various levels of consent?
So when they ask for consent, we
Mhm.
do tell them, you have to tell them that you don't have to give consent,
Mhm,
which also relates into you can be put into a coercive situation
Mhm.
by action to make you think that you have to give consent.
Right.
We can't do that. For instance, I'll give you an example. I pull you over and I ask, for whatever reason, I'm asking you
Yep.
for consent. Total different situation. I pull you over, 5 cops come to back me up and they're all standing
Yeah,
behind
and
you
you
like
ask for
this.
consent,
You
yeah.
feel that you had no other choice.
yes,
That would be a situation that would be illegal and you would win that in court. So there's those types of things that come into play that changes the situation.
and those standards for, forget the term, but coercive, whatever you just
Correct.
said.
I cannot coerce consent from you.
Yeah, and those
For
standards are
instance, you
Vermont law.
cannot be handcuffed. I'm gonna arrest you and throw you in the car. Can I search your car while I'm doing that? No, because you're handcuffed. You feel that you are obliged to say yes. So if you're seated behind the wheel and I'm just having a conversation with you and say, you know, what's that on your front seat?
Mhm.
Gee, I don't know. Well, I'll tell you what I think it is. May I search your car?
Mhm.
That's not being coerced.
And would probable cause kick in then?
Well, at that instance, yes.
Yes, that's
because
okay,
that,
okay.
right. But if there's other things that, you know, if I just ask you, you know, gee, what's that smell? Can I search your car type thing? Those types of things.
That actually just made me think it's the Hannah case. I think it's the scent of marijuana case. that was, they moved it down from, it's not probable cause anymore for
Correct.
searches, right? And so does that,
It's because it's legal.
right,
in Vermont.
right. So if,
However, it does get cloudy and I don't want to get
yeah,
off
this is,
track
this
here.
is what I was, yeah.
It
that's
does
what I
get
was
cloudy
trying to get at.
because if you were smoking it and
Right.
you're now operating under the influence, I
Yeah.
still have
Mhm.
the ability to put you through sobriety
Right.
exercises and all that and go that route.
Right.
But then
But that
have good
doesn't-
evidence of that.
Right. That doesn't mean I automatically can go and search your car. Hence, we go back to the search incident to arrest is not automatically.
Yeah.
It's not, it's prohibited.
Cool, thank you.
I've got another one for you. And again, it's just an instance,
Love
and I'll say this is, I'm curious for myself. I have property in Middlesex,
Mhm.
that I hunt. And when I travel back and forth from Barry to Middlesex, I quite often have a firearm in my vehicle. It's always unloaded. If I should, not that I ever speed, but if I should, and I was pulled over for speeding, can the officer ask me if that firearm is loaded and ask to see it?
Mhm.
And does that fall under reasonable articulable?
Most time, yes, most times, like if you get stopped by Fish and Game, they will say, hey, is that firearm unloaded? Yes, so they will ask you, can you show me? And if, in your case, if you're not doing anything wrong with that weapon,
If it's-
9 out of 10
empty,
times, you're gonna be like, oh, absolutely.
Right.
Mhm.
Usually, when you have an upstanding citizen that gets stopped with a firearm in their vehicle, they usually will say, just so you know, I have
Mhm.
a gun in my car, it's here.
Yeah.
It's unloaded.
All right, well, we beat that page up. Unless there's more on page 3.
Does does an individual have the right to revoke consent after probable cause is established?
Yes.
Okay.
But
And
then
then
it
And
goes-
how
it
it-
goes to the warrant,
Yeah, and then again, it just gets overridden by the, okay.
which is also the reason why a lot of Supreme Court laws, you can see all these cases that are
Yes,
referenced.
and I
in here,
appreciate that, thank you.
has come out of these because, for instance, I gave the example of, I've arrested you and I put you in the back seat of my car in handcuffs and now I'm searching the car.
Mhm.
You need to be there to have the ability to say, well, I don't want you to search anymore. Once, for instance, if you're carrying the mother load in your trunk and I'm walking towards your trunk and I'm gonna go search your trunk, you have the ability to say, I withdraw consent right
Mhm.
now.
But does that then trigger a reasonable articulable suspicion?
It does, but it doesn't trigger probable cause. So I would need probable cause to seize that car and get a search warrant. And again, if I stopped you and, for instance, like, dare I say, some of the things that have gotten officers in trouble, maybe even in Tennessee with, the different units that were operating down there, if they're just randomly pulling people over and
Right.
asking for consent,
Yeah.
they're, that led to all these things that went on in the country. Not that specifically, but those bleed into it.
And is that also not trying to make this a conversation about constitutional rights? But is that the Fifth Amendment then? Is that what gives that protection that? you
Fourth
can-
Amendment, search and seizure,
Well, but the Fifth Amendment not to criminalize yourself,
not to incriminate
saying
yourself.
like, hey, they do have the mother load in the trunk. They say no because they don't want you to find it.
If I have.
Can you
probable
use
cause.
that denial? So the denial itself does not trigger the probable cause,
Correct.
even in.
You would need something else that would go into that. For probable cause. If you just deny search, doesn't automatically give probable cause for a search warrant.
This is pretty much cut and dried. If the person says, no one wants to search it, and the officer says, okay. He doesn't have the right to
Right,
keep
unless they have something else.
something else
there.
really.
For instance, that doesn't forbid them to, and again, there's a time limit here. I can't hold you there for 3 hours while I wait for a canine.
I was just gonna say that.
But if, for instance, we were here in Berry City, a canine could get here in 5 minutes, they could do a sniff of your vehicle, even though you denied me to get into your trunk. And if they hit on it, that is now probable cause to seize the car.
Even if that dog is detecting marijuana, which is now legal.
It's, well, if it was, yes, they would be able to still do that if. And that's why they don't train for the marijuana.
Right.
But yes, if it was trained in marijuana and hits on that car, yes, but your plausible defense would be, hey, they hit on marijuana because that's all I have in the car.
Mhm.
But again, if you have more than you're supposed to. You're gonna be in trouble.
Yeah, right.
But if you just had
Couple garbage
one
bags.
baggie of weed in there and it was less than an ounce and the
Mm-hmm.
dog hit on it. And you just wanted to
Yeah, and even if
make
the
us go
officer
through all
finds
the
it, but
motions
yeah.
and they ended up getting the search warrant, you couldn't be charged with anything.
And I would just continue to echo that many people, even if they are completely within their rights, do not feel comfortable saying no to anything police ask them. And
Right.
that's,
And I fully understand that. I just do want to reiterate that here and most places in this area, I can't speak for metropolitan areas in California and Tennessee and those places, we are professional and do not
Mhm.
just randomly go around saying, we're gonna mess with the public.
No, in the city.
They-
Yeah.
They're, if they're asking you, there's a reason.
And the flip side of that is that we've all seen and heard some of the terrible things that citizens say to police officers
Mhm.
that if something was said or done to me like that, I would probably be the one going to jail.
I've
But
read it
because
outside
it
my
is
window.
a citizen's right, so you've got both sides is my
Mhm.
point, Counselor. You've got those people that you're right, they're scared. They don't think that they can say no, they don't understand what their rights are, but then you've got these other, the flip side of that, so it works both ways.
Yeah,
You
and that's-
get both
And
ends-
just another,
Yeah.
both
another,
ends of the spectrum.
another bolster for body cameras,
yep,
Yeah.
full,
Good segue.
yep.
yes, full transparency that, everything's on camera.
And that's, and yes, because there's the, everyone's favorite, you have the right to be an asshole. And it
But you
is,
have to be.
no, you don't have to be, but you can be.
Yeah.
And we also, police officers also pretty much have the full backing of the legal system and are armed.
Yes.
So that it is very reasonable to, I feel, to expect them to, well, it may not be nice, not something I would ever do, to take some verbal abuse without locking somebody up or firing.
Whether it's warranted or not, you feel
Yep.
that way?
Yep.
You mentioned body cameras,
Mhm.
which we don't have, but that language is in letter B, bullet point 2 at the end.
Ensure
Under
these
warrantless
instances.
vehicle search, it says ensure these instances are clearly captured on body worn camera video.
Mhm.
So
I've written this knowing that they're coming.
are we all right having that language in there? Because you can amend this, right?
Yes.
You're, okay,
I'm
you're all right with that?
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
fine with that.
Because this will, in theory, assuming we approve this, without any changes, would be approved in a couple of weeks or 3 weeks by council, depending on how fast, or at least, I'm sorry, would be presented to council, not necessarily approved, but it would be presented to council. Okay. Just wanted to be sure.
Yeah, and I think that would just go through the standard. It wouldn't become a council problem unless the chief disciplined somebody for being in violation of the policy, and then that would clearly be overridden because they don't have cameras yet. so.
Okay. Page 4 took it hard as well. Anything else? Let's go to page 5. Which is again part of the warrantless vehicle search procedures consent. I I guess under letter E, the race data collection, that's
That's,
gonna mean something to law enforcement, chief?
yes, that's standard on the back of, that's statutory and it's standard on the back of any traffic ticket. These are all the boxes that was incorporated in there that's put out.
Is this new?
No, we've been collecting and reporting all this data for a few years now. They've had published reports, Seguino and Brown, the Seguino report
that.
from UVM came out a few years ago, and this was all part of that. We have to report.
So, yeah, just like the past few years.
Mhm.
Okay, that's-
Yep, it's statutory that we have to report. So if you get pulled over and you get a ticket, this all gets filled out, no search, whatever. If there's something that transpired into a search, then you would have to list why we searched. And the reason for that is to, if you had an issue where there was a person of color that, you could see where an officer like has, only persons of color get searched, you've got a problem. And that was the whole gist of all of that. Came out of the profiling
Oh, yeah.
issues from New Jersey State Police.
Oh, yeah, in the past,
Yes.
it was bad where I came from.
Is that the race information like the same though I would see on a 4473 Hispanic or Latino, white?
Yeah, it's white. I think it says Islander
Mhm.
or native.
Maybe Pacific Islander.
Hispanic, yeah, they're standardized.
So it's even broader, a
Yeah.
little, okay, so it's a little broader than what's on there. Just I noticed that we go from E to G to H.
Oh,
Get them on the little things. Will.
EFG, I got that. Yeah, I'll have to correct that.
I wasn't sure if F was missing. or it
No,
just been missed.
no,
Yep.
a lot of the times what happens is the automatic numbering and
Yep. Right. Under 5, which is seized vehicle search procedures with a warrant.
Mhm.
Officer will not inventory a vehicle seized for application of a search warrant,
Correct.
inventory the vehicle or inventory the contents of the vehicle or both.
Inventory the contents.
Okay.
So there's such a thing as called an inventory search. So if I were seizing a vehicle, and this is to prohibit this, if I were seizing a vehicle and I was going to quote unquote inventory it, I could say, you don't need to get a warrant, or gee, you better get a warrant. So that keeps honest people honest.
Mhm.
You can't inventory a car if you have gotten it seized for a warrant, because you're gonna do an inventory through the warrant.
Through the
process.
warrant itself.
Correct.
Okay.
And an inventory search comes in, for instance, if you have an accident and I tow your car and you have a bunch of valuables sitting there in plain view, we wouldn't want to be accused of stealing your
Right.
valuables, so we would do just the quick inventory of note what the valuables are in the car.
And the reasoning for that is because the search warrant could be denied and then you inventoried something that you shouldn't have inventoried.
Correct.
Okay.
Or you tried to circumvent the Fourth Amendment process against illegal search and seizure by inventorying it to see if you need to get the warrant.
Second bullet point there, Berry City Police Department towing record. I don't recall seeing that. Is that
Because the towing policy hasn't come out yet.
okay?
Abby had a question. Did you put your hand up?
Oh, I was, oh,
I didn't know if you
I
were
was
raising your
just-
hand
Yeah.
for a question. I just.
oh, I'm sorry, thanks, Phil.
Anything else on page
I
5?
was, and then I didn't.
Okay. Moving to page 6. Anybody have anything on page 6?
I appreciate your comment in here about recognizing the loss of use of a vehicle can be detrimental for an individual.
Yes,
Yep.
so
Cause you know, you drive to the parole officer's appointment, now you're missing parole because you
Yes.
got pulled
So
over.
vehicles and cell phones are pretty much deemed to be folks' livelihood.
Mhm.
Hence all the Supreme Court law about that.
Yeah.
This is not statutory. This is my own thing stating, because I've seen where officers have kept a car for almost a week. And why would you do that?
Yeah.
You know, if you're gonna do it and get it done.
Appreciate that.
Procedural question. Officer gets a warrant for a vehicle and is scheduled to fly to Bahamas and leaves for 10 days. Is that turned over to another officer? Okay. Anything else on page 6, folks? We will move to page 7. Just a grammatical thing, and I may be just a curiosity, I guess. However, the Plainview under E, Plainview Doctrine. Third sentence, I guess. However, the Plainview Doctrine is not a per se. I'm wondering if there's supposed to be quotation marks around that, or is that
No, that's.
per se
standard.
warrant exception is the actual the terminology? Okay. Easy. Any other questions on page 7?
Is, in what situation does an officer observe something which is evidence of a crime, but is not an area in which they legally have access to? And if they observe something which is evidence of a crime, one assumes that triggers probable cause.
It does.
So then they
But you have-
therefore,
You have to be legally. You have to be legally present and it has to be in plain view. So, for instance, I cannot go out of my way and set up like a box to climb over your fence and look in your yard and take extraordinary measures. But if I'm walking by, your gate's open and I look
Mhm.
and I see something that's evidence of a crime, I can say, oh, that was in plain view.
I see, okay.
But we can't take the extra step.
Yep.
that
Go, yeah, go out of your way to,
Yes.
yeah, okay.
Without a
That
warrant.
makes sense, that makes sense, okay.
Hence, with all the drones, I can't just fly a drone over your house now and say, oh, look.
Awful narrow-minded like that. We're done with 7. Moving to page 8. I had a question about marijuana, but you've already addressed that, and answered that. Nothing else, excuse me, on page 8. We'll move to page 9. Sorry for the folks at home, we're now in seized and forfeited vehicles subject to Title 18 forfeiture.
And that, just to preface that, that rarely happens. Usually that would only happen like if you get El Chapo up here with a car, they would, forfeit his vehicles. It doesn't happen in Vermont. Very rarely it does. I've seen, big major cases where something was forfeited and seized, but it generally. What is statute?
So page 9. Nothing. Page 10 is the cancellation and signature page. We have worked this one pretty hard, but I don't believe we have any substantial changes with the exception of the lettering
F and G.
in section 4. So I guess I would entertain a motion to approve the number 406 procedure as amended. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further conversation? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you all. Okay. Discuss and number 10, consider approving the grievance process. And I will say that I reached out to the chief and asked if this had been run through the collective bargaining agreement, and the chief said that it had been. So I was curious what the procedure was, whether it would go from us to them and then go to council, or what. So apparently the language in this policy has been approved.
Yes, so the language that you see under specifically under section 2 on the second page where it says grievance procedure.
Mhm.
And it says the grievance procedure consists of 4 steps. And members are encouraged to make reasonable attempts. All of that is contractual language.
Mhm.
It's taken right out of the contract. So the specific verbiage in here that's not in the contract is about non-contractual grievances. For instance, if somebody has an issue that, you know, so-and-so's picking on me or whatever, you know, it's to have the open door policy and have them bring that forth. So that it doesn't turn into something like a hostile work environment or any of those types of things.
Okay. Any questions on page 1?
So, no, but just, sorry, but off of that, is it only you and Larry are the only 2 exempt from the CBA?
Yes.
Nothing on page 1? For those at home, this is the grievance process, number 319. There's nothing on page 1. We'll move to page 2. The grievance procedure. Nothing on page 2.
I wish we could put down that all grievances end like the last 2.
I have a theory.
You too?
So nothing on page 2, page 3. Under B, non-contractual grievance procedure. They may file a non-contractual grievance with their immediate supervisor in a timely manner.
Mhm.
Normally, there's a form in all of your previous policies. There's a special form, or is this because it's non-contractual?
It's non-contractual, so they do have,
Verbal.
the union actually has a form
Mhm.
that they file for grievances if it's a contractual. This would just be a memo or an email. They could say, hey, I want to talk to you about, you know, whatever.
So no form.
No form.
Annual analysis.
You'll see everything as an annual analysis to not only for transparency but to make sure that the policy is getting reviewed and to see if there's any trends and to fix anything if there's an issue like, gee, why is there so many grievances? And those types of things. That's why just about everything has that analysis piece to it.
And then again, that, in the sake of transparency, that would be something that would be open to the public.
Yep.
Okay. That was the other question that I
Yep,
had.
everything's done in a transparent manner so they know what's going on.
All of this is transparent.
Is there anything else under page 3? If not, then I would entertain a motion to consider approving the grievance process number 319. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's a unanimous approval. We have another policy procedure been approved. We at 7:58 will move to miscellaneous. Does anyone have anything for miscellaneous?
I was just gonna give the chief kudos for jumping dumpsters. Because of the dumpster. But I will say, I didn't see a hug from Chief Cushman, Chief Dodge. They were supposed to hug each
You're
other
right. I didn't
when
see
they
that
jumped in
either.
the dumpster and rolling
We
around
do.
waiting for it.
No hugs. Okay.
Let the minutes reflect.
Let the minutes reflect.
Good for you,
When
because
was this? I need
it
to.
was Saturday. It's on
was
the aired
Saturday.
out page.
Yeah, it's on aired
Yeah.
out. It's on Wilkins Harley page. as
Yeah.
well.
Facebook page. Yeah.
If you go to the aired out page on. Yeah, it's pretty entertaining.
Excellent work, everyone. Chief, excellent work again, and all the great input. Thank you for all your hard work. And it is 7:59. I would entertain a motion for adjournment if there's nothing else.
Seconded.
Okay, non-debatable. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Wow, this is a long one.
He's right.